Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 11. Etan nirvidyamananam Ichhatamakuto bhayam yoginam nripanirnitam harer namanukirtanam etan nirvidyamananam Ichhatamakuto bhayam yoginam nripanirnitam harer namanukirtanam etan nirvidyamananam Ichhatamakuto bhayam yoginam nripanirnitam harer namanukirtanam etan nirvidyamananam Ichhatamakuto bhayam yoginam nripanirnitam harer namanukirtanam. Etat, it is, nirvidyamananam, of those who are completely free from all material desires. Ichhatam, of those who are desirous of all sorts of material enjoyment. Akutaha bhayam, free from all doubts and fear. Yoginam, of all who are self-satisfied. Nripa, O king. Nirnitam, decided truth. Harehe, of the Lord, Shri Krishna. Nama, holy name. Anu, after someone, always. Kirtanam, chanting. Translation. O king, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. Purport. In the previous verse, the great necessity for attaining attachment to Mukunda has been accredited. There are different types of persons who desire to attain success in different varieties of pursuits. Generally, the persons are materialists who desire to enjoy the fullest extent of material gratification. Next to them are the transcendentalists who have attained perfect knowledge about the nature of material enjoyment and thus are aloof from such an illusory way of life. More or less, they are satisfied in themselves by self-realization. Above them are the devotees of the Lord, who neither aspire to enjoy the material world nor desire to get out of it. They are after the satisfaction of the Lord, Shri Krishna. In other words, the devotees of the Lord do not want anything on their personal account. If the Lord desires, the devotees can accept all sorts of material facilities. And if the Lord does not desire this, the devotees can leave aside all sorts of facilities, even up to the limit of salvation. Nor are they self-satisfied, because they want the satisfaction of the Lord only. In this verse, Sri Shukdev Goswami recommends the transcendental chanting of the holy name of the Lord. By fenceless chanting and hearing of the holy name of the Lord, one becomes acquainted with the transcendental form of the Lord, and then with the attributes of the Lord, and then with the transcendental nature of his pastimes, etc. Here it is mentioned that one should constantly chant the holy name of the Lord after hearing it from authorities. This means that hearing from authorities is the first essential. Hearing of the holy name gradually promotes one to the stage of hearing about his form, about his attributes, his pastimes, and so on. And thus the necessity of the chanting of his glories develops successively. This process is recommended not only for the successful execution of devotional service, but also even for those who are materially attached. According to Sri Shukadev Goswami, this way of attaining success is an established fact, not concluded not only by him, but also by other previous acharyas. Therefore, there is no need of further evidence. The process is recommended not only for the progressive students in different departments of ideological success, but also for those who are already successful in their achievement as fruitive workers, as philosophers, or as devotees of the Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami instructs the chanting of the holy name of the Lord should be loudly done, and it should be performed offensively as well, as recommended in the Padma Purana. One can deliver himself from the effects of all sins by surrendering himself unto the Lord. One can deliver himself from all offenses at the feet of the Lord by taking shelter of his holy name. But one cannot protect himself if one commits an offense at the feet of the holy name of the Lord. Such offenses are mentioned in the Padma Purana as being 10 in number. The first offense is to vilify the great devotees who have preached about the glories of the Lord. The second offense is to see the holy names of the Lord in terms of worldly distinction. The Lord is the proprietor of all the universes, and therefore he may be known in different places by different names. But that does not in any way qualify the fullness of the Lord. Any nomenclature which is meant for the Supreme Lord is as holy as the others because they are all meant for the Lord. Such holy names are as powerful as the Lord, and there is no bar for anyone in any part of the creation to chant and glorify the Lord by the particular name of the Lord as it is locally understood. They are all auspicious, and one should not distinguish such names of the Lord as material commodities. The third offense is to neglect the orders of the authorized acharyas or spiritual masters. The fourth offense is to vilify scriptures or Vedic knowledge. The fifth offense is to define the holy name of the Lord in terms of one's mundane calculation. The holy name of the Lord is identical with the Lord himself, and one should understand the holy name of the Lord to be non-different from him. The sixth offense is to interpret the holy name. The Lord is not imaginary, nor is his holy name. There are persons with a poor fund of knowledge who think the Lord to be an imagination of the worshipper, and therefore think his holy name to be imaginary. Such a chanter of the name of the Lord cannot achieve the desired success in the matter of chanting the holy name. The seventh offense is to commit sins intentionally on the strength of the holy name. In the scriptures, it is said that one can be liberated from the effects of all sinful actions simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord. One who takes advantage of this transcendental method and continues to commit sins on the expectation of neutralizing the effects of sins by chanting the holy name of the Lord is the greatest offender at the feet of the holy name. Such an offender cannot purify himself by any recommended method of purification. In other words, one may be a sinful man before chanting the holy name of the Lord, but after taking shelter in the holy name of the Lord and becoming immune, one should strictly restrain oneself from committing sinful acts with the hope that his method of chanting the holy name will give him protection. The eighth offense is to consider the holy name of the Lord and his chanting method to be equal to some material auspicious activity. There are various kinds of good works for material benefits, but the holy name and his chanting are not mere auspicious holy services. Undoubtedly, the holy name is holy service, but he should never be utilized for such purposes. Since the holy name and the Lord are of one and the same identity, one should not try to bring the holy name into the service of mankind. The idea is that the Supreme Lord is the supreme enjoyer. He is no one's servant or order supplier. Similarly, since the holy name of the Lord is identical with the Lord, one should not try to utilize the holy name for one's personal service. The ninth offense is to instruct those who are not interested in chanting the holy name of the Lord about the transcendental nature of the holy name. If such instruction is imparted to an unwilling audience, the act is considered to be an offense at the feet of the holy name. The 10th offense is to become uninterested in the holy name of the Lord, even after hearing of the transcendental nature of the holy name. The effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord is perceived by the chanter as liberation from the conception of false egoism. False egoism is exhibited by thinking oneself to be the enjoyer of the world and thinking everything in the world to be meant for the enjoyment of oneself only. The whole materialistic world is moving under such false egoism of I and mine. But the factual effect of chanting the holy name is to become free from such misconceptions. And again, the translation. O King, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratushe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. We heard a very lengthy purport by Srila Prabhupada, quite a few pages long. Not the longest purport, but it's definitely one of the longer ones. The longest purport is, I can't remember, I think is in first canto. The Srila Prabhupada's purports, especially in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, are very, very long, because Srila Prabhupada very much intended to get a large quantity of his message in the first canto, because according to his pastime, Srila Prabhupada was not certain how far he would get into his translation work of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he wanted to make sure that upon the completion of the first canto, there will still be a significant and substantial contribution of the philosophy in order to understand things. Which is why the first canto, even though sometimes we feel it preliminary, even in its contents, it's mainly about the story of Bhagavatam, rather than the pastimes with which we normally study Bhagavatam to read. Of course, those pastimes are the story of the Bhagavatam. The story of those people the pastimes of those people who will end up hearing and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam are the examples of the living Bhagavats, and therefore their pastimes and text are very much the textual Bhagavat. However, we often think, that in the later cantos, that's when we're hearing pastimes of Varahadev and Mohini and Kurma, and of course then Ramchandra, Narasimhadev, and then at the Samambonam, Sri Bhagavan Krishna. And so sometimes we might feel that the first canto can feel a little preliminary. However, Srila Prabhupada has given a lot of nectar in there. And he's given, in many ways, a substantial foundation for all knowledge in Krishna consciousness. So actually the first canto should always take, especially the first canto with Srila Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports, should always take a central role in our study of Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. So we are reading this text. Of course, it is World Holy Name Week, so the order of the shlokas has been switched around a bit, and it's been switched around for texts in the Bhagavatam, which are very much directly glorifying the holy name and the chanting of the holy name. And in this case, also the purports as well. So, actually, it is not to be considered that there are some texts of Srimad Bhagavatam which are, glorifying the holy name, and some which are not. Actually, Sanatana Goswami has said in his Tika, in his commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the Bhagavatam itself can be called not just the Bhagavata Purana, the Purana of the great devotees of Sri Bhagavan, but it can also be called a Nama Purana. It is the Purana which helps us delve into the knowledge of how to chant the holy name. So actually every shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam is glorifying the holy name in some way or another. Some texts just require a bit more deeper diving in order to access that nectar. However, today's text is not one of those. It's very direct, that all people can find success without having to second guess. It is doubtless. Akutta bhayam, free from all doubts and all fear. And why would fear come? Fear comes naturally from doubts. So often, the great fears on the spiritual path are not, or in any sadhana, based on spiritual activity, because of course spiritual activity is founded on shraddha, on faith. The great fear is never, fear of monsters or something. It's not a fear in horror of pain or something. It's a fear that arises from doubts that this won't work. This practice that I'm performing, maybe it won't work. Maybe I'm not executing it properly. This or that. So many doubts will arise. Have I misunderstood it? Because it's so complex, have I misunderstood what I'm doing? Or maybe I've understood it properly, but without realizing it, I'm having some issues in the execution of it. And because of these doubts, then fear arises. With these doubts, there's a fear. What if I get nothing from this? What if I've spent my whole life, given up all my material life to be a devotee, and I'll get nothing for it? These sort of fears, they crop up. However, in the chanting of the holy names, all these doubts and fears, they do not need to arise. Because the chanting of the holy names is actually so easy. Kirtan is so easy. We know there's that famous lecture of Srila Prabhupada on when he quotes Narottam Das Thakur, Golokera Prema Dhona Harinama Sankirtan. And then he says, this is so easy to chant that even a dog can do it. Anyone can engage in this chanting process. One merely need avoid these 10 offenses in order to get the highest reward. But even the offended name can give the desire, can give the results to that person, the ichchatam, that person who is so filled with material desires. Namaparad can still give bhukti, can still give material sense gratification. Namabhas, then the next level above, can give mukti, liberation to those who are tinted with or tainted with some element of speculative knowledge. And then Shuddhanam, that can give Krishna Prem. That can give the real essence. However, only by avoiding the 10 offenses one can receive all that the holy name can give. And what it can give is a lot. We hear here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is unpacking these 3 types of people. They're those people who are filled with desire, sarvakama. We know elsewhere in Bhagavatam. This is a famous shloka. And they are described as sarvakama. And those who are sarvakama, they're filled with all sorts of material desires. And the example that is often used is that of Dhruva Maharaj. And so, Dhruva Maharaj, we know his father was very much favoring his stepbrother, Uttam. And the name, of course, I think reflects the bias in his father's attitude. And of course his stepmother, or the co-wife of his father, she was very unfavorable to Dhruva Maharaj, and we know the pastime well. Then she goes and tells him that if he goes off and does some sadhana, then maybe he can have the fortune of taking birth in a better womb such as hers. And Dhruva Maharaj, very much embodying the Kshatriya anger, the intense anger of the Kshatriyas. He goes off and he's furious, and he's also deeply hurt by these words, and he speaks them again to his mother. And his mother, she cries hearing this. And of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he clarifies that actually the words of his stepmother were actually meant for a twofold process. One is that she wanted to impress her husband, Dhanapad. She wanted to say, look, I'm so spiritual. I'm telling this young boy to take up to spiritual life. So then, with her false desires, with her bogus sort of identification with her intense false ego, with her very demoniac nature, she wanted to use the recommendation to take to spiritual practice in order to try and get some prestige and favor from her husband. The second purpose for saying this was that she wanted to hurt her co-wife. She wanted to make it that when Dhruva Maharaj leaves, that is very painful for a mother to see. We know the great pains of Shachimata when Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great sannyasi. So, we know this is very painful. And so she wanted to cause pain to her co-wife, and this is why she has given this advice. However, Dhruva Maharaj's mother, she is a very saintly person. And she says, go and do this, but don't do it for such a low goal as taking birth in the demoniac womb of your stepmother. Instead, go and do it for something more. You know, our ancestor, the great Manu, he has received so many great things by performing devotional service. And so Dhruva Maharaj, he goes out, a small boy. And he goes out ready with sarvakama or ichchatam, desirous of all sorts of material enjoyment. Because he wanted not only the kingdom of his father, but he wanted a kingdom greater than his father. So intense was that purpose. And so he went out, and of course Narad Muni, who's always there at the right time, he's always there at the appropriate time when you need him, he bumps into Dhruva and he almost finds him cute. He finds it very cute, the small child, and he's glorifying. He said, this is the glory of the wrath of the Kshatriyas. That even such a small child can be filled with so much anger and so much determination that he will go out and perform such austerities. And he tells the kid, grow up a little, come back later, finish university, come back, and then I'll teach you all of these things. But Dhruva Maharaj, he will not budge. So eventually Narad, he explains to him where to go, how to assemble a deity, and most importantly, he gives him a mantra. Interestingly enough, this mantra is given before Dhruva Maharaj would have been in any appropriate age to to receive Diksha mantras like the Gayatri, Om Bhur Bhuvasva, that one. So, this is showing that Vaishnava mantras are independent of Varnashram consideration, of the samskaras, of the purificatory rituals of Vedic civilization. Even though he had not received the samskar, I'm mind blanking now on the name of the samskar, that boys receive when they receive the when they receive the various Gayatri mantras. He's still given the mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And with this, he chants. And he performs a form of bhakti, not Shuddha bhakti, not Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadya Navrittam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Ruttama. Not this bhakti, but he still performs something like a Yoga Mishra bhakti. Bhakti mixed in with his execution of the yoga practice. So we know he's only initially just drinking water, and then he stops drinking water, and then he slows down his breath. And he executes all of these things, and then we know he gains quite intense mystical achievements. He becomes as heavy as the Paramatma and weighs down the earth, because he gains the omnipresence of the Paramatma. As he holds his breath, the whole universe begins to suffocate, like this. And then of course the Paramatma comes, and then Dhruva Maharaj, he becomes very upset that he even approached the Lord for such a small trifle as the kingdom of his father. But the point is that he got what he wanted. He got what he wanted. If one approaches with any desire, they will receive it. If they execute devotional service and if they chant the holy names of the Lord. And then a bit beyond that then, Dhruva Maharaj, he of course was very disgusted, and he thought, I was approaching wanting tiny shards of glass. I was approaching the source of diamonds. And I was hunting tiny bits of glass. Such a small thing I wanted, such a pointless thing. How foolish was I? But a bit higher than that, and Srila Prabhupada does say it's a bit higher, because we know in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu, after going into the heart of his South India tour, which is of course meeting Rai Ramananda, and actually at the beginning of the South India tour, we find the same attitude being had. Everywhere that Mahaprabhu would go, and we know that this last half of the 7th chapter of Madhya Leela, Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur says that this is representing the model of how Mahaprabhu would preach. This is exactly the nature of how Mahaprabhu would go in every village propagating the Prema Sankirtan movement. And everywhere we go, we get the two examples. We get the Vasudev leper, and we get the Kurma Brahmin in this chapter. First we get the Kurma Brahmin, and of course the Kurma Brahmin, he's very upset. He's invited Mahaprabhu to his house, and he doesn't want Mahaprabhu to go. He doesn't want to lose the association of Mahaprabhu. And so he tells Mahaprabhu, he says, I never want to lose your association, and because I'll always be disturbed by the waves of material life, if I do not abandon it all and come with you. And Mahaprabhu, what does he do? He gives him two instructions. He says, preach the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and chant the holy names. And then surely, no matter what situation you are in, it will never disturb you. If it is your Grihastha life, or even if you renounce Grihastha life, it doesn't matter. Practically, if you do these two things, you'll be perfectly situated in transcendence. And then the Kurma, the Vasudev leper, who gets cured of his leprosy, he speaks to Mahaprabhu, and he says that he doesn't want to be overcome by arrogance or by pride, thinking that Mahaprabhu has blessed me to cure my leprosy. And what does Mahaprabhu say? He says, in order to overcome the problems you have presented before me, what should you do? Preach the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and chant the holy names. So in these two cases, we find this repeated, and we know, according to Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, that this is the archetype of what the preaching of Mahaprabhu was. So we know that if this has been repeated in both places, this is what Mahaprabhu was preaching to everyone. And no matter what issue they would present, the questions, the problems that the Vasudev leper was presenting towards Mahaprabhu was very different to the problems that the Kurma Brahmin was presenting. And yet Mahaprabhu's response was the exact same. Chant and preach, chant and preach. And what else is preaching but an extension of chanting? We know of the 9 forms of devotion. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada, Sevanam, so on and so forth, listed by Prahlad Maharaj. We know that there's a devotee who is given as the example of a person who received perfection through each one of those alone. So you know Bali Maharaj, Atma Nivedana. Hanuman through Dasya. Arjuna through Sakya. Through Shravanam, Parikshit Maharaj. But who was it through Kirtanam? It wasn't Haridas Thakur. It wasn't anyone chanting the holy names directly. But it was Shukdev Goswami. So Kirtan involves the chanting of the holy names, and it also involves preaching the message of Grantharaj, Srimad Bhagavatam. So factually these are the same things, but one is the Kirtan of the holy names of Harinam Prabhu, and one is the Kirtanam of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we know this is the advice that was given. No matter what problem was presented to Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu would say chant, 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 chant. Because no matter what problem gets presented to anyone, no matter what problem one has, the solution is always chant your rounds, Prabhu. Chant extra rounds if you can. Often our chanting is a race to the 16th round. We're waiting until we can get to that 16 rounds, and then we're done. That's it. 16 rounds is both our minimum and our maximum. But actually, 16 rounds is only our minimum. We know Muhammad Ali, he famously would only start counting his sit-ups when it started to hurt. It's only the sit-ups after it starts hurting that counts. In many ways, it is only the rounds after the 16th round that count. It's not to say, of course, that your chanting of 16 rounds is bad, but it is when we are naturally doing these extra rounds. Especially, people will say, oh, Srila, we should be doing so much service and all. But how many of us are actually doing service with our extra time? How many of us are actually what they call now full-time devotees? Actually, all devotees should be full-time devotees. If you're not a full-time devotee, you're not actually a devotee. That's a bit heavy to say, but it's true. The Kanishtadhikari is not defined. Is not defined by someone who's occasionally dabbling in devotional life, who occasionally comes to the temple every once in a while. The Kanishtadhikari is somebody who is already engaging body, mind, and spirit in the service of Krishna. We know in the Rai Ramananda Samvad, so I was saying there, that there are the different levels. Initially, all of these elements of sort of karma-based, materialism, varnashram, giving all of the fruits of one's works to Krishna. They're all rejected by Mahaprabhu as eho bahyo. He says, age koho ar. You're external to the spiritual world. Golokera prema dhana harinam sankirtan. This harinam sankirtan is about coming to the platform of Golok. And so, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says when Mahaprabhu says eho bahyo, this is external. He means it is external to the spiritual domain. We are still external from the spiritual domain by executing varnashram and all these things. So he says, speak something more. And then he speaks of what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here. The Jnana Mishra Bhakti. Or even just the renunciation of all material existence. And Mahaprabhu says, eho bahyo, age koho a. Even devotional service being performed for the desire of liberation. If one seriously performs it, this is external to devotion. So age koho a, speak something more. And then, Rai Ramananda, what does he say to Mahaprabhu? He says, Jnana Shunya Bhakti, Shorbo Shadhoshar. This is the essence of all perfections. And Mahaprabhu says, eho hoi, age koho ar. He says, this is all right, but speak something more. And this seems confusing because Jnana Shunya Bhakti, especially in the way that is defined. Ramananda Rai, he quotes Brahmaji's prayers after repenting in the Brahma Vimohan Leela, where he says one should dedicate mind, body and words to hearing Krishna Katha and to serving those people who speak Krishna Katha. And then the mind, body and words of the Supreme Lord will be dedicated to the person who is doing such activity. This sounds very high. But Srila Prabhupada actually writes in his purports that this can even be describing the Kanishtadhikari. This is not even the goal, this is the beginning of spiritual life. Heavy things to hear, but this is the conclusion. So, like this is the actual goal. It is not just that 16 rounds is the beginning of one's chanting, and then after that, then one begins to chant. Because actually one should be engaging every moment in service. And so many people, they'll say, Prabhu, I'm too busy. And that is fine. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur even allowed people to miss rounds sometimes, with his permission, if they were doing service, if they were anyways doing kirtan. But today when people say I'm too busy, they mean, oh, I'm too busy at work, I'm too busy watching TV, I'm too busy painting my house, I'm too busy with my university work, I'm too busy with all these things, all these excuses. Practically speaking, when somebody says I'm too busy, they mean nothing less. And they mean nothing less. It is not to be considered that only in the worst cases they mean this. If anyone says they're too busy, they mean I love Maya more than I have any ounce of affection for Krishna. I am too busy means that I am in love with Maya. I am in love with sense gratification. And I do not care at all about going back home, back to Godhead. When I say I want to go back home, back to Godhead, practically, I just mean I don't want to suffer as much. I want better sense gratification. Because if one had an actual mindset of wanting to go back home, back to Godhead, they would realize again, Golokera, Premadana, Harinama Sankirtan. By associating with the holy name, then one can associate with the atmosphere of going back home, back to Godhead. But if one is saying, I'm too busy, I'm too busy, I'm too busy, these are all excuses because they don't want to say what's actually there in their heart. That they're more infatuated with career, with sense gratification, with their household, with the mode of passion, maybe even the mode of ignorance. Some people will just, what will they do? Some people will have the mode of passion. We know Srila Prabhupada says the foundational point of the mode of passion is what? The attraction of man for woman. And because of this, then they think, I want career, I want to maintain my household, I want this and that, I want prestige in society, and so they'll think, I will do all these things. I will spend all my effort, all of my time doing unnecessary activities, maybe even doing welfare work. I'll be working on projects because I want to. All these pointless things they'll do. And this is just the mode of passion. And then they'll engage instead in cultivating Rajagun rather than cultivating devotion. But then some people will just sleep. Some people say, I'm too busy to chant, and you ask them what they did all day. They did nothing. They just sat down. Srila Prabhupada says this as well. Tamogun, the mode of ignorance. What is it characterized by? Even though he can do something, he does nothing. In the 14th chapter, Srila Prabhupada, he writes this in his purports. He could do something with his time, but he sits down and does nothing. This is tamogun. And this is also sometimes used. I'm too busy, Prabhu. Again, I'm too busy means I'm too infatuated with courting the modes of material nature. So, actually, the majority of people are not too busy to chant extra rounds. If service is being done, then that is fine. Then one can say they're too busy to chant extra rounds. But 95% of people who say they're too busy are most likely too busy with Maya. So, a bit heavy, but we should know chanting the holy name is very merciful. And practically speaking, it's almost blasphemous to say that we're too busy. So much mercy is being proposed to us, and we are so ungrateful to engage in everything else in our life. So then, if we get away of all of those other sort of desires, however, then we can engage in the platform of chanting the holy name properly. Chanting for devotion's sake. Those two other categories, they can get what they want. But that is not a very high goal. As Mahaprabhu said, he asked, what is the ultimate goal of life? And all of these goals, he's saying, are eho bahyo, they are external. We haven't even begun to answer the question. These are not shorvo shadhoshar. These are not the essence of all perfections. So then, how do we hear the higher thing then? Again, Golokera, Premadhana, Harinam Sankirtan. Our chanting in Sankirtan, of course this expands out to all glorification of the holy name. Because the holy name is absolute, there are great glories for it. Goloka does come when we chant the holy name. It's Nam Prabhu, the holy name, is the foundation for all other things. All of the qualities, all of the pastimes, all of the form of Krishna, all of his qualities, all of his pastimes, all of these things, they are found in the holy name. When one chants the holy name, all of the lifting of Govardhan Leela, the Ras Leela, the killing of Aghasur, all of the pastimes of Krishna, they're all there. Running around with the cowherd boys, being woken by Mother Jashoda. All of these things are found when one merely chants the holy names of Krishna. It's all there. And all the knowledge that anyone could ever want, all the knowledge that anyone could ever need is there. This is how the holy name practically is the highest and most merciful thing. We can read so many books, but if only we had the ears to listen. If only we had the ears to listen to the holy name, we would hear the answer to all our questions, to all our problems. And we would hear answers to questions that we do not even know to ask. It is all there in the holy name. The holy name is an infinite ocean of mercy. All knowledge that we could ever want, all joy that we could ever want is there. But we are so filled with our offenses. We are so filled with our anarthas. Not that we diminish the holy name with our offenses and anarthas, but like clouds in the sky can obstruct the sun rays without blotting out the fire of the sun. In the same way, our anarthas and our offenses, they blot out the effectiveness of this Chintamani Nam, this wonderful gem, touchstone of the holy name. But it is all in there. So how then do we receive it? How then do we get purified? Srila Prabhupada, he lists the 10 offenses. And if I have time, we'll go over them. But I'm starting to hit the overtime mark. But how do we get them? Srila Prabhupada, he makes it very clear. Hearing from authorities is the first essential. We get nothing, not even our chanting, outside of the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Outside of the mercy of the Vaishnavas who are chanting Shuddha Nam, we do not get anything. Even our chanting we cannot do. Sometimes it's said Shraddha. This is the first platform of devotional service. Shraddha, then Sadhu Sangha. So first you have some faith, then you get the association of the devotees. That's what people think, but actually this is not the correct understanding of the 9 stages of devotional life. Actually, this Sadhu Sangha after Shraddha means actively searching out the devotees to find senior Vaishnavas who can be your spiritual master, and to hear Krishna Katha from them. Again, Srila Prabhupada has said that hearing Krishna Katha from the senior Vaishnavas, this even can be referring to the Kanishtadhikari, the beginner in devotional life. Actually, preceding Shraddha is the 0 stage. There's the first platform, but there's also the 0 platform of devotional life, and that is also Sadhu Sangha. But the second stage of devotional life is active Sadhu Sangha, searching out the sadhus, searching out the devotees for their association. This one is done, but the passive one is done first. When one merely gets the mercy, hears somehow from authorities, hears somehow the holy name being chanted by the perfected devotees of the Lord, and by hearing from Vaishnav Thakur, Shuddha Nam, then he can begin chanting. This is the only way that it can happen. The Shuddha Nam must enter through the ear, pass through the heart, and then come out through the mouth. This is the process by which chanting is done. Not even our chanting is done solitarily. It is not that one can think, Now I will leave the association of the devotees. Now I will go and I will chant on my own somewhere, out in a cave. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Like this. Then one will only be, what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, one will only be counting beads. They will not actually be chanting the holy names. It must be done in the association of the senior Vaishnavas, with their mercy. We know Devaki and Vasudev, what great glory they had, and do have. They are the parents of Krishna. But we know their glory is often compared to the glory of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Jashoda. And Mother Jashoda and Nanda Maharaj, they're always glorified as so much higher than Devaki and Vasudev. And we see the result of this, we can see in their past lives. We know Prishni and Sutapa, that was Devaki and Vasudev in a prior life. And we know who Mother Jashoda and Nanda Maharaj, who were they in their previous life? They were Drona and Dhara. Obviously, it's a bit different because Nanda Maharaj and Mother Jashoda, who are Drona and Dhara, Mother Jashoda, she is Nitya Siddha. She never attained her position. So how can she have a previous life? Actually, it's understood, Jiva Goswami has explained that Drona and Dhara are angshas, expansions of Mother Jashoda and Nanda Maharaj, who came out in order to manifest pastimes. And then when apparently they take birth as Nanda Maharaj and Mother Jashoda, they're actually merging back into their bodies. But how did Drona and Dhara get their position? And how did Prishni and Sutapa get their position? And when we understand this, we'll understand why one way is higher than the other. Because Prishni and Sutapa, what did they do? They did great austerities and they worshipped Narayan directly. And then they asked Narayan that they can have Krishna as their child. But Drona and Dhara, what did they ask for? Who did they ask? First, what did they ask for? They asked for Krishna Prem. Our goal is Krishna Prem. It is not to have Krishna, it is to have Krishna Prem. But secondly, who did they ask? Prishni and Sutapa, they asked Narayan directly. But Drona and Dhara, they asked Brahma. They asked a devotee of the Lord. And therefore they got the higher thing. Through the devotee of the Lord, we receive more mercy. Through the devotee of the Lord, we actually receive the Lord in His fullness. From the Lord, He can only give a tiny bit of Himself. But from the devotee of the Lord, we can get all of the Lord. And actually, some person might ask, well, Brahma, he hasn't really conquered the Lord. How can he give such a high? Vraja Prem is not a very, very common thing. How can he give something so high? Actually, it's explained that when Brahma gave this blessing, when he said Tatastu, actually it was Saraswati on his tongue who gave it. And Saraswati was empowered by Yoga Maya, because of course Saraswati is Yoga Maya. They're both Maya, they're both Shakti of Bhagavan, was empowered to give this high Prem. Of course, this is all pastime. Actually, Mother Jashoda always has Vatsalya Prem, as does Nanda Maharaj. So from here we can see, it is in order to get these things, in order to get bhakti in that pure form, which is what we want. It's not that we're doing Harinam. Mayavadis sometimes sing the Mahamantra. Other sampradayas will sing the Mahamantra, and they're thinking of Narayan. They'll think of Hari, not the Hari who captures all of the hearts. This is the rasika meaning, which we have in our sampradaya. Hari is that person who is stealing hearts. No, they'll just think of some Vishnu form. And Krishna, they'll be saying Krishna, but they'll be thinking, oh yes, Krishna, the avatar of Vishnu, the avatar of Narayan. They'll be saying Ram, and they won't be thinking of Krishna, because of course Ram is a name of Krishna in Vrindavan. They won't be thinking Ram, maybe of Balaram, which is a little further away from the highest conception, but still a valid conception. They'll be thinking of Ramchandra. And this is valid. Srila Prabhupada himself said this is valid. But this is not the highest conception. We should understand how to chant. And again, how do we understand how to chant? From hearing from the authorities. This is the first essential. So we should understand the proper mood to chant. And in this way, we can chant properly. And then we can chant of Hari. And we chant in a way that all of these other groups, all of these other understandings, they do not understand. Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he once held an event and he invited the followers of Madhvacharya, the Tattvavadis, who are very, very strict in performing yajna and puja. Practically, they don't have time to do anything else. They're always engaged in performing their yajnas, performing all of their various forms of worship, and very precise. And so they went, and Gaur Govinda Maharaj invited them, and they performed all of the arti and all. Fantastic, perfect, so opulent, so wonderfully done. But they're devotees of Krishna, yes, they are. In Udupi, we know such a beautiful deity of Krishna is there. But they're devotees of Krishna in that mood of intense opulence. Krishna, the Supreme Lord. So after doing this, then it was the devotees' turn. After Arati, we have Kirtan. And so all the devotees came out. All these precise rules and regulations were followed by the Tattvavadis. But the devotees came out banging their mridangas with the kartals, and they were just singing Sankirtan. And the Tattvavadis, they were aghast. They were thinking, what am I seeing? They were confused. They didn't even know this. Because this Sankirtan, done in the mood of Mahaprabhu, done on this highest conception, this Sankirtan is not in the realm of Vaikuntha. The realm of Vaikuntha, which the followers of Madhvacharya are dwelling in. The conception of Vaikuntha. It is not there. It is in Golok. And so chanting should be done in this mood of Golok. If Golok era Prema Dhana, Harinama Sankirtan, is to happen, we should understand what is the mood of Golok. And again, how do we understand that? We understand that from hearing from the authorities. And so, I've gone over time. I was going to discuss about the nature of the 10 offenses, but I'll wrap up now by speaking one point about the glories of the holy name when it is chanted in that full way, when it is Shuddhanam. There were 2 police officers once, and these 2 police officers, they were speaking. And the one police officer, he was saying, you know, in India, we are very, very lucky. We are very lucky that we are worshipping Krishna and that Krishna is a thief. The other police officer, he said, hey, what are you talking about? That's the last thing we need. We're police officers. We're catching all these people stealing and robbing and doing all these things. In fact, it's a bad thing. Why do we have Krishna, who is seemingly endorsing stealing butter, running around pinching people, breaking all the rules? Krishna, he's a rule breaker. We are policemen. Krishna makes our job harder for us. Another policeman, he said, yes, you can think like that, but actually morality isn't our problem so much. There is more to life than morality. And morality, we're police. We're here to stop people who are having such bad ideas. We are fortunate that Krishna is a thief. Why? Because when we chant, in our hearts, we create so many barriers. We have so many anarthas, so many things of lack of value. We have so many aparadhas, so many offenses in our heart, which are like walls that we construct. Our heart actually is very soft. Jiber Sharup Hoy Krishner Nittodash. The actual essence of the soul is devotional. It is very sweet. It is like the butter that Krishna wants to eat. But we've constructed so many walls around it because of our material conditioning. But thankfully, Harinam, Hari, who is stealing hearts, he will not let those walls stop him because Krishna is a thief. And he will climb past all of those walls. And climbing past all of those walls, all of those barriers, that little thief Krishna, he will steal our hearts. And stealing our hearts then all of these barriers that even ourselves we cannot cross, Krishna has crossed them all. And then he has taken our hearts from us. And taking our hearts from us then we can have true satisfaction. Then we have a perfection beyond even morality. And then all the other problems in our lives will be solved. If only our hearts can be stolen by Krishna, then we do not need to be worried by any of these things. And therefore, it is so merciful, it is so great, it is our great fortune that Krishna is a thief. And so, with that, we should try to pray, do Harinam. Because Hari, this is why we say Harinam and Krishna Nam. Hari speaks to Krishna as a thief, much more than the name Krishna does. And so we should be chanting, and chanting a lot, with the right conception. With the correct conception, not with any other desire and not with any other excuse. We should be chanting, especially in this week, especially now that we are in Purushottam month, and then especially in Kartik month, which will be happening very quickly after Purushottam month. We should be chanting like this, extra rounds, if we can, and most of us can. We should be chanting like this, and we should be praying as we are chanting, please Krishna. Because that's what the Mahamantra is. It's, oh Krishna. Please Krishna, please steal my heart. I have erected so many walls around it that are preventing me from taking it and giving it to you. But you are the greatest thief. Please steal my heart from me so that I may taste some devotion. So, with that mood, we should be chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Harinama ki jai. Shri Srimad Grantharaj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.